The Sterling family's London townhouse was a monument to wealth, a gilded cage of pristine marble and polished mahogany. Every surface gleamed, every antique sat perfectly placed, but the air itself felt sterile, devoid of the warmth that makes a house a home. In the vast dining room, a meticulously arranged breakfast lay untouched, a silent testament to the constant absence of its owners. Eleanor Sterling, the formidable fashion executive, and Marcus Sterling, the astute investment banker, were perpetually on the move, their demanding, globe-trotting careers ensuring that the grand residence remained largely an empty shell, a backdrop for their opulent but emotionally barren lives. Yet, within those sterile walls, a different kind of warmth resided, emanating from Aisha Cole. For Lena Sterling, their 9-year-old daughter, Aisha wasn't just the nanny. She was the steadfast sun in Lena's often cloudy world. Since Lena was 3, Aisha's consistent presence had been the only constant, a gentle hand, a listening ear, a source of unwavering comfort. While Eleanor and Marcus offered fleeting, superficial interactions, Aisha cultivated a deep, trusting bond with the girl, her quiet wisdom and empathetic spirit forming the true anchor of Lena's young life. Aisha observed everything, her watchful eyes missing nothing, her quiet strength often mistaken for mere deference. One ordinary Tuesday morning, as Aisha moved through Lena's room, meticulously folding laundry, her gaze snagged on a pale pink skirt. There, faint but unmistakable, was a small reddish-brown stain. Aisha paused, her hands still, her mind rapidly sifting through possibilities. A scraped knee? A dropped berry? Then, a sharp, knowing realization dawned. The stain was too specific, too telling. A wave of concern washed over her, quickly followed by a hardening resolve. This was a sign, a silent alarm Lena's parents were far too busy to hear. The day progressed, and Aisha's observations sharpened. When Lena returned from school that afternoon, her usual buoyant energy was conspicuously absent. She dragged her feet, shoulders slumped, a deflated balloon. In the warm, inviting kitchen, a stark contrast to her internal turmoil, Aisha gently probed. "Rough day at school, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft. Lena merely shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "It was fine, Aisha," she mumbled, her answers evasive, her distress palpable. Aisha's concern deepened, confirming her earlier suspicions and highlighting Lena's profound isolation from her parents. Awareness. Later that evening, the truth became undeniable. Aisha quietly followed Lena upstairs, watching as the girl changed into her pajamas. As Lena pulled on a fresh pair of white cotton, the stark red stain on the pristine fabric was impossible to miss. It wasn't faint anymore. It was a clear, unmistakable mark. Aisha's eyes widened. A jolt of alarm, then a surge of protective fury, coursing through her. Lena, oblivious to her visible distress, simply tugged at the fabric. A flicker of confusion on her young face. The situation was now undeniable, solidifying Aisha's resolve to act. Aisha took a steadying breath. This wasn't a moment for hesitation. She softly closed Lena's bedroom door, the click echoing in the quiet room, and then moved to sit gently on the edge of the girl's bed. Lena, sensing the shift in atmosphere, instantly tensed, her small hands fidgeting with the edge of her blanket, eyes darting away from Aisha's steady gaze. Aisha's voice, though calm, carried a quiet insistence, a firm determination that belied its gentle tone. "Lena, sweetheart," she began, her gaze unwavering. "Can we talk for a moment?" The question was an invitation, but also a quiet command. Lena nodded, her apprehension clear. Aisha gently stated, "I noticed some stains on your clothes today, darling. When did this start happening?" Lena's eyes welled up instantly, her small frame trembling. "Last week, Aisha," she whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with shame and fear. "It happened last week, too, and I didn't know what to do. I felt so alone." Tears streamed down her face, a heartbreaking confession of profound isolation, a direct consequence of her mother's constant absence. Aisha's heart ached, but beneath the pain, her resolve hardened, a silent vow to rectify this egregious neglect. Aisha's arm gently wrapped around Lena, pulling the girl into a comforting embrace. "Oh, my sweet girl," she murmured, her voice a balm. "There is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. This is a perfectly natural part of growing up. She began to explain, calmly and factually, about monthly periods, normalizing the process, dispelling the fears and confusion that had plagued Lena for days. She spoke of health, of womanhood, of the body's natural rhythms, her words a clear, steady stream of information Lena desperately needed. Lena's shoulders visibly relaxed as she absorbed the reassurance, a small glimmer of understanding replacing the fear in her eyes. Aisha knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that Eleanor Sterling's willful disregard had just sealed her own fate. The soft glow of the bedside lamp did little to chase away the shadows from Lena's tear-streaked face. She still clutched the blanket, her small voice barely a whisper against the vast silence of her opulent room. "I was so embarrassed at school, Aisha. And I didn't want to bother Mum. She always says I come to her with small things when she's busy." Aisha held her tighter, the warmth of her embrace a stark contrast to the cold indifference Lena described. Within Aisha, a quiet storm brewed, a righteous anger that simmered beneath her calm exterior. This was more than neglect. It was a systemic disregard for a child's fundamental needs, a failure Aisha was now determined to rectify, one strategic step at a time. With gentle hands, Aisha moved from comforting words to practical empowerment. She retrieved a sanitary pad from the discreet package she'd already prepared, calmly demonstrating its use, step by step. Her voice was steady, normalizing a natural process that Lena had been left to face in terrifying isolation. Lena watched, her initial embarrassment slowly fading, replaced by a tentative understanding. As Aisha explained, Lena's shoulders visibly relaxed, the tension that had gripped her for days finally easing. In Aisha's presence, Lena found a sanctuary of safety and knowledge, a stark difference from the emotional desert her parents had created. Later that night, tucked into bed, Lena whispered a heartfelt, "Thank you, Aisha." Her eyes, still a little red, met Aisha's with a profound gratitude. "I really thought Mum would be mad at me for bothering her with something so small." Aisha gently kissed Lena's forehead, her touch a silent promise of unwavering support. Yet, beneath that tender gesture, her mind was a whirlwind of strategic resolve. Eleanor's dismissive attitude, even in Lena's innocent perception, was an unforgivable breach. Aisha knew then that her intervention would not just be about care, it would be about delivering justice, leveraging every ounce of her hidden authority. After Lena finally drifted into a peaceful sleep, Aisha remained by her bedside, the room steeped in a heavy quiet. Her gaze swept over the luxurious yet emotionally sterile surroundings. Eleanor's profound absence, her willful disregard for Lena's most vulnerable moments, fueled a deep mix of sadness and righteous indignation within Aisha. This was not merely a nanny's concern. It was a call to action. Aisha's strategic mind began to churn, connections forming, pathways to a deeper, more profound authority being illuminated. This was not just about protecting Lena. It was about holding privilege accountable. The next morning, the grand dining room felt heavier than usual. Lena picked at her expensive breakfast, her gaze distant, a visible nervousness clinging to her. Her small fork pushed blueberries around her plate, untouched. "You need to eat, sweet pea," Aisha said softly, her voice a warm anchor in the silent, tense room. "It's okay to be nervous, but don't let it make you hide. Not from me, not from yourself." Lena offered a weak, non-committal hum, her anxiety a persistent, unseen burden that no amount of Aisha's comfort could entirely dispel. A clear sign that a deeper intervention was required. Then Lena looked up, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "I just wish Mum would notice," she confessed, her voice thick with longing. "I wish she cared enough to tell me these things." Aisha reached across the polished table, her strong, comforting hand clasping Lena's small one. "I will always be here for you, Lena," she promised, her voice firm with a conviction that now carried the weight of impending action. In that moment, Lena's raw plea solidified Aisha's unwavering resolve. The time for quiet observation was over. The time for decisive confrontation had arrived. Later that evening, the Sterling townhouse was momentarily filled with the sharp click of Eleanor's heels, a whirlwind of designer luggage, and the incessant drone of her phone. She swept in from Paris, a vision of high-fashion efficiency, her phone already glued to her ear. "Darling, I'm back," she chirped into the receiver, barely glancing at Lena, who stood shyly in the foyer, or at Aisha, who observed with a steely gaze. Without a pause, Eleanor seamlessly transitioned to another business call, her world entirely confined to the frantic demands of her career, oblivious to the quiet disappointment etched on Lena's face. Aisha waited patiently until Eleanor finally ended her call, a dismissive sigh escaping her lips. The air in the grand living area was thick with Eleanor's impatience, her eyes already scanning her phone for the next urgent notification. Aisha approached her, her movements calm, deliberate, yet radiating an unwavering resolve. "Eleanor," she began, her voice soft but firm, "might I have a word with you? It's important regarding Lena." Eleanor, already turning away, paused, a flicker of irritation crossing her perfectly composed face. "Can it be quick, Aisha? I have another call in precisely 3 minutes." "It can," Aisha replied, her voice gaining a quiet, formidable edge. Eleanor, still dismissive, began to tap her foot, impatiently checking her watch. "Well then, out with it." Aisha met Eleanor's gaze, her own eyes unwavering. "Lena started her period last week, Eleanor. She was confused, frightened, and utterly alone. She didn't know what was happening to her body." Eleanor's phone, which had been poised for the next call, slowly lowered. Her face, usually so composed, began to drain of color. "What?" she managed, a faint whisper of disbelief. But I was in Milan," Aisha continued, her voice clear and cutting through the silence. "Yes, you were, which is why I had to be the one to explain it to her. I had to be the one to comfort her. Because you, her mother, were not here." The words hung in the air, a devastating blow. Eleanor stood utterly still, her usually frenetic energy replaced by a dawning horror, the full weight of her monumental failure crashing down upon her. Eleanor Sterling, so accustomed to orchestrating the world around her with a mere flick of a manicured wrist, now stood frozen. The color drained from her face, leaving her usually vibrant complexion a sickly pale. Aisha's words had landed not like a gentle suggestion, but a blunt-force trauma. "What?" Eleanor managed, her voice a brittle whisper. She needed her mother." The reality of her absence, not just from a moment but from a pivotal milestone in her daughter's life, crashed down. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating, welled with tears. But these were not tears of genuine sorrow for Lena's confusion or fear. No, these were tears of profound self-pity, of a meticulously crafted image shattering, of the professional damage that now loomed. A child's simple biological fact had become a weapon, wielded by her nanny, and Eleanor saw her carefully constructed world begin to crack. Aisha simply watched, her gaze unblinking, allowing the bitter truth to fully mar Eleanor's elegant facade. Aisha Cole stepped forward, not with comfort, but with the quiet authority of a storm front. Her voice, usually soft, now resonated with a steel that cut through Eleanor's dawning panic. "Indeed, she needed her mother," Aisha stated, her words measured and precise. "But in your absence, Mrs. Sterling, it fell to me to explain to Lena what you neglected to. And I did more than just explain." Aisha's hand moved, not to strike, but to present. From her pocket, she retrieved a small, discreetly folded document. "As you know, I am a trained solicitor specializing in family welfare law. And, as you may not know, I have maintained a detailed, dated log of every significant parental absence, every missed milestone, every instance of emotional neglect Lena has experienced since her 3rd birthday." Eleanor's eyes widened in horror as Aisha, with chilling calm, continued. "This, Mrs. Sterling, is not just a personal failing. It is a documented pattern of parental neglect that, in my professional opinion and with the backing of my network, would be of significant interest to social services and certainly to the board members and investors of Sterling & Company. Imagine the headlines. Fashion mogul's neglectful parenting exposed, daughter left to nanny for puberty education. Your reputation, your career, your very influence, all hinge on the image of the perfect, powerful woman. I assure you, this evidence will dismantle it." Eleanor's phone, still clutched in her hand, slipped to the luxurious rug with a soft thud, her face a mask of utter defeat. Her grand home now felt like a gilded cage, and Aisha, the unassuming nanny, held the key. Later that night, the grand, sterling townhouse was uncharacteristically quiet. Under Aisha's watchful eye, Eleanor Sterling, her usual imperious stride replaced by a stiff, hesitant walk, approached Lena's bedroom door. A soft knock, barely audible, preceded her entrance. Lena, nestled in her bed, looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Eleanor's apology was strained, her words careful, almost rehearsed. "Lena, darling," she began, her voice lacking its usual warmth. I am so sorry for not being here, for not explaining things. It was a lapse, a terrible oversight." Lena listened, her small frame still, her eyes wary. When Eleanor finished, Lena's response was simple, yet profound. "It's okay, Mom. Aisha helped me." The words hung in the air, a quiet testament to the true source of her comfort, a stark reminder to Eleanor of her profound failure. Aisha, observing silently from the doorway, felt a quiet satisfaction. This was not genuine reconciliation, not yet, but it was accountability, and that was the first, critical step. Lena's simple words, "Aisha helped me," echoed in Eleanor's mind more sharply than any critical review or financial report ever could. It wasn't remorse for Lena's suffering that stung, not truly, but the chilling realization of her loss of control, the success of Aisha's strategic intervention. Eleanor retreated to her opulent study, the room usually a sanctuary of power, now felt like a tribunal. She spent the long night hunched over her laptop, not planning her next fashion line, but calculating damage control. Each email sent, each call made, was a strategic move to mitigate the fallout Aisha had so expertly engineered. Her transformation was not born of love, but of necessity, a cold, tactical shift to salvage her empire and her carefully curated image. Over the next few weeks, a new, albeit cold and transactional, normal settled over the Sterling household. Eleanor made visible efforts to be, quote, present. She attended breakfast, her phone conspicuously absent from the table. She took Lena for walks in the manicured garden, her conversation stilted, often punctuated by a glance at her watch. She even attempted to assist with homework, her offers of help feeling more like obligations. Marcus, too, adjusted his schedule, leaving work earlier, his interactions with Lena formal and somewhat awkward. He'd read her bedtime stories, his voice devoid of genuine warmth. Aisha watched it all, a silent observer of the forced adjustments, a quiet satisfaction settling over her. Justice, in its own way, had been served, even if true healing remained a distant hope. In the wake of Aisha's intervention, Lena Sterling began to bloom with a quiet confidence. She knew, deep in her young heart, that she was seen, held, and cared for, even if her parents' newfound attention was born of external pressure. Aisha remained her unwavering anchor, but her role had subtly shifted. She was no longer just the caregiver filling a void. She was a respected figure of authority whose presence ensured the new, accountable family dynamic held. Lena's resilience grew, nurtured by the knowledge that someone had fought for her visibility, for her right to be seen. The events in the Sterling household served as a powerful, unspoken lesson. Systemic privilege and immense wealth, the narrative proclaimed, could not buy genuine connection or evade the consequences of neglect. Money and status could not purchase time, love, or a mother's true presence, nor could they shield one from accountability. Children, in their purest form, measured worth not in designer labels or stock portfolios, but in the unwavering currency of love and attention, a truth Aisha Cole had so powerfully demonstrated through her strategic actions. As Lena Sterling grew older, she often reflected on that pivotal night with Aisha. It wasn't just about her first period. It was about being seen, held, and guided when she felt most invisible. It was a justice delivered. Lena carried that lesson, a silent vow deep within her heart. She would never, ever let someone she loved feel invisible or neglected when she became an adult.